To start off this panel, actually, I'm not going to talk about the Pacific. I'm going to talk about Cameroon, if you would indulge me. Some of you who are familiar with the Institute's work might know that we have been looking at resource extraction, land grabs, especially in Africa. So just last week, we released a report called Heracles Exposed. Heracles Farms is a New York-based investor which managed to get 73,000 hectares of land in Cameroon. It went in talking about sustainable palm oil plantation that will create jobs, that will provide drinking water, schools for children, the usual speak. Last week, along with Greenpeace International, we released a report which is based on their own internal documents, their business plans, their communication with the investors, their internal emails, which basically showed that this company in Cameroon is operating illegally. It doesn't have a land lease for 73,000 hectares, which, by the way, is the second largest rainforest after the Amazon. It said that the timber would be given to the Cameroonian government and they'll make money off it. That's why they are only paying 50 cents a hectare. But in materials to the investors, they said you should invest in us because we can sell this timber for close to $1 billion. So it is basically a tale of corruption, of lies. We also found evidence of them bribing government officials. As I said, communication with the investors. And very interestingly, just before we released it, we had offered an exclusive to Wall Street Journal. So when the Wall Street Journal journalist approached Heracles Farms on May 18th, they suspended their operations in Cameroon. Yes, it's very interesting. Once, I've said this before, it's almost, and which Laurie Wallach always from Public Citizen says, it's like the Dracula effect. You drag the ugliness and the reality of these land deals into the sunlight. It has no place to hide, no place to run, and it disappears. Whether it has been Ethiopia or Tanzania, South Sudan, I can mention many, many such tales, whether it was Howard Eugene Douglas, a former US ambassador for refugee affairs, who managed to get 1 million hectares of land in South Sudan for $25,000, or whether it was another Bruce Rastetter from Iowa, of AgriSol, who was planning to displace 170,000 people, smallholder farmers in Tanzania. But once their deals have been exposed, the reality has been exposed, they just disappear. But at the last Mananue that Jerry talked about, I was very fortunate to meet with Adam from PANG, which is Pacific Asia Network on Globalization. And he walked up to me and said, why would you just focus on Africa? Do you have any idea what's happening in the Pacific? What's happening in our part of the world? Why don't we work together? And as a result of that, we have just started work in Papua New Guinea, and you will hear from Rosa, who's been our partner and a supporter in Papua New Guinea. But just really quickly to tell you what we're looking at. Here is a country where nearly 85% of people are small-scale farmers who depend on subsistence farming, and they do some cash crops. The country's constitution gives people the most protective legal framework in terms of land rights and commons. So 97% of the land is actually owned by people, and there are no landless. However, in the name of development, things are changing. Policymakers, businesses, they have found ways to bypass the spirit of the Constitution, which recognizes the commons. So in the name of development, right now you have a thing called Special Agriculture Business Lease, which has given away 5.5 million hectares of land to foreign investors. Our initial research already shows that leases have been signed with violation of free prior informed consent. It is through corruption, as Ralph mentioned. Most deals are about logging. They have nothing to do with agriculture. Projects, they use intimidation, they use security forces to suppress dissent. I had talked about Cameroon. Heracles had the right by the Cameroonian government to hire their own police. So they could kind of completely bypass, arrest any villager who was protesting. So it's the same in Papua New Guinea. And beyond 5.5 million hectares, some 11 million hectares of land are under logging in Papua New Guinea. So you consider a total land of 46 million hectares for the country, including 30 million hectares of forest. And so if you consider this 11 million hectares of land given away to foreign investors, it would have a major toll on PNG's country resources. This kind of attack that we're seeing and the stealing and theft we are seeing is not unusual. It's happening all over, as I said, whether it's Africa or Latin America or the Pacific. Of course, when you look at countries like Papua New Guinea or African nations, it's far more blatant and huge. It's happening in the name of palm oil. It completely lacks transparency. It is happening as it is promoted as the new development paradigm, whether it is the donor countries, whether it's the development agencies. Ralph in the earlier panel talked about the attack on governance, how state has become an agent for corporate globalization. But for us, as we see that, it's true, we have seen corruption in Cameroon, we have seen corruption in Ethiopia, we have seen corruption elsewhere. But this corruption is being bred by Iowa-based investors and New York-based investors, and we need to recognize our own role in it. The other thing that we constantly hear is the legal framework. I've been told over and over again, why do you call it a land grab? It's all legal. There is an investment agency that has allowed for this business deal to happen, for this land deal to happen. It is interesting that basically it has become legal to end customary rights, to basically privatize land. That is what's become legal. And whenever people talk about legal, I'm reminded of the fact that there was a time when women were not allowed to vote. That was legal. Apartheid was legal. So it is going to be really important to challenge this development paradigm, which comes with its own framework of laws, to say it is all legal. Stealing, theft, violation of indigenous rights, there's nothing legal about it, there's nothing ethical about it.